The wind howled through the valley, carrying the scent of wild flowers and a whisper of something lost. Clara stood frozen at the edge of the dirt path, her boots sinking into the mud, staring at the crumbling cottage where her childhood had unraveled. She hadn't been back to this forgotten corner of the countryside in 20 years, not since the summer she turned 12, when everything she loved was torn away. Clara's heart pounded as she approached the sagging wooden gate. The memories flooded back, running barefoot through these fields, her grandmother's laughter echoing as they chased fireflies under a starlit sky. The shawl, that soft, patchwork shawl her grandmother wove, had been her shield against the world, draped over her shoulders during those endless summer nights. But now, at 32, Clara was a stranger to this place, a city dweller with a life built on deadlines and concrete. Her grandmother, Aloan, was gone, or so she thought. The letter in her pocket, creased and worn from rereading, said otherwise. "Come back, Clara. There's something I need to give you." The cottage door creaked as she pushed it open, revealing a dim room filled with the scent of lavender and old wood. Dust motes danced in the slivers of light piercing the shutters. Clara's breath caught as she saw her alone, sitting by the hearth, her silver hair glowing like a halo, her hands folded over a familiar bundle of fabric. The shawl, its colors vibrant reds, deep blues, and threads of gold, seemed untouched by time, as if it had been waiting for her all these years. "Clara." Aloan's voice was soft, almost a whisper, but it carried the weight of 1,000 unspoken words. "You came." Clara's throat tightened. She wanted to run to her grandmother, to collapse into her arms like she had as a child, but her feet felt rooted to the floor. "They told me you were gone," she said, her voice trembling. "After the fire they said you didn't make it." Aloan's eyes, sharp and knowing, met keyword. One met hers. "They were wrong, child. But I couldn't come for you. Not then." She rose slowly, clutching the shawl, and crossed the room. "I've been waiting to give you this." Clara took the shawl, her fingers brushing the familiar weave. It was heavier than she remembered, softer, like a piece of her past come alive. Tears stung her eyes as she wrapped it around her shoulders, the warmth of it pulling her back to those long-ago summers. "Why didn't you find me?" she whispered. Aloan's face crumpled, her hands trembling. "I wanted to, but I was broken, Clara. After the fire, I wasn't the same. I needed time to heal, to find my way back to you." She reached out, her fingers grazing Clara's cheek. "This shawl was my promise to you. It holds more than memories." Clara frowned, her fingers tracing the intricate patterns. "What do you mean?" Aloan smiled, a flicker of mischief in her eyes. "You'll see. Wear it tonight, under the stars. It'll show you." That night, Clara sat outside the cottage, the shawl draped over her shoulders, staring at the endless sky. The countryside was alive with sounds: crickets, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of an owl. She felt a strange warmth from the shawl, not just physical, but something deeper, like a pulse. As she closed her eyes, the world seemed to shift. A soft glow enveloped her, and suddenly, she was no longer sitting on the grass. She was standing in a meadow she didn't recognize, the air thick with the scent of honeysuckle. A young girl stood before her, no older than 10, with wild curls and a grin that made Clara's heart ache. It was her Clara, as a child. The girl ran toward her, laughing, the same shawl flapping behind her like wings. "Come on," the girl called, her voice bright and fearless. Clara stumbled after her, her adult legs heavy with disbelief. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. But the meadow felt real, the grass brushing her ankles, the breeze cool against her skin. The child Clara stopped at a stream, pointing at the water. "Look, it's magic," she giggled. Clara knelt beside her, seeing nothing but the reflection of the moon. Then, the water rippled, revealing a vision. Aloan, younger, weaving the shawl by candlelight, her hands steady but her eyes wet with tears. Clara gasped. The shawl wasn't just fabric, it was a vessel, a bridge to moments lost in time. The vision faded, and Clara was back under the stars, alone. Her heart raced. The shawl had shown her something impossible, something her grandmother had woven with love and secrets. She clutched it tighter, tears streaming down her face. Aloan had never abandoned her. She had been preserving their past, waiting for the right moment to share it. The next morning, Clara found Aloan in the garden, tending to roses that bloomed despite the cottage's neglect. "What is this shawl?" Clara demanded, holding it up. "How did it show me things?" Alohan's smile was both tender and cryptic. "It's a piece of our family, Clara. My mother taught me to weave memories into thread, to hold on to what matters. That shawl carries our summers together, yours, mine, and hers." Clara's knees buckled. "Your mother?" She had never known her great-grandmother, only stories of a woman who sang to the stars. The idea that the shawl held their shared history was overwhelming. She sank to the ground, Alohan kneeling beside her. "It's not just a shawl," Alohan whispered. "It's us. And there's more to show you, when you're ready." Clara spent the day in a daze, the shawl never leaving her shoulders. She wandered the fields, the memories of her childhood sharper now, as if the shawl was unlocking pieces of her soul. She saw flashes of moments she'd forgotten, picking apples with Alohan, dancing in the rain, falling asleep to her grandmother's stories. Each memory was a gift, but it also hurt, reminding her of the years they'd lost. As evening fell, a stranger appeared at the gate, a man in his 60s, weathered but kind-eyed, carrying a basket of bread. "You must be Clara," he said, his voice warm. "I'm Thomas. I've been helping Alohan keep this place alive." Clara blinked, caught off guard. "You live here?" Thomas chuckled, setting the basket down. "For a while now. Your grandmother's a stubborn one, but she needed someone after the fire. I'm just the neighbor who stayed." Alohan joined them, her eyes softening at Thomas. "He's more than that," she said, squeezing his hand. Clara's chest tightened. Her grandmother had found someone, a quiet companion in her absence. It was a twist she hadn't expected, a reminder that life had moved on for Alohan, too. Clara sat at the wooden table, the shawl draped over her lap, its colors catching the morning light. Thomas's presence lingered in her mind, a quiet shock that her grandmother hadn't been alone all these years. She wanted to feel relief, but a pang of jealousy gnawed at her. Someone else had shared Alohan's life, while Clara had been left to grieve. Alohan poured tea, her movements slow but deliberate. "You're quiet this morning," she said, sliding a cup toward Clara. "Is it Thomas?" Clara's fingers tightened around the shawl. "I just didn't expect it. You had someone, and I didn't know." Her voice cracked, betraying the hurt she hadn't meant to reveal. Alohan's eyes softened. "Thomas came later, Clara. After the fire, I was lost. He was a friend when I had none. But you were always my heart." She reached for Clara's hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "I kept the shawl for you, to bring you back to me." Clara swallowed hard, the weight of the shawl grounding her. She wanted to ask more, to understand the years she'd missed, but the shawl seemed to hum against her skin, urging her to listen to its secrets instead. "Show me more," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. That night, under a sky ablaze with stars, Clara wrapped the shawl around her shoulders and closed her eyes. The warmth enveloped her, and the world shifted again. This time, she stood in a kitchen, the air thick with the scent of baking bread. A woman she didn't recognize, her great-grandmother, she realized was singing softly, her hands weaving the shawl on a loom. Young Alohan, barely older than Clara had been during those summers, watched in awe. "Pay attention, Alohan," the woman said, her voice rich with love. "Every stitch holds a piece of us. This shawl will carry our family's heart." The vision shimmered, and Clara saw Alohan, years later, adding her own stitches, her face streaked with tears as she whispered Clara's name. Clara's eyes snapped open, her cheeks wet. The shawl wasn't just a gift, it was a legacy, a thread connecting 3 generations. She clutched it to her chest, her heart aching with the love woven into every fiber. But a question burned within her. Why had Alohan waited so long to share it? The next day, Clara confronted her grandmother in the garden. "Why now?" she asked, her voice sharp with years of buried pain. "You could have found me sooner. I thought you were dead." Alohan's face fell, her hands trembling as she pruned a rose bush. "I was ashamed, Clara. The fire, it wasn't just the cottage. I failed you. I was too weak to come for you. And by the time I was strong enough, you were gone, building a life I didn't want to disrupt." Clara's anger flared, then softened. She saw the guilt in Alohan's eyes, the weight of choices made in pain. "You should have tried," she said, softer now. "I needed you." "I know," Alohan whispered, tears falling. "That's why I kept the shawl safe. It was my way of holding on to you." They sat together in silence, the shawl between them, a bridge across the years. Clara felt the pull of its magic, urging her to forgive, to understand. She reached for Alohan's hand, their fingers intertwining like they had when she was a child. That afternoon, Thomas joined them for lunch, his easy laughter filling the cottage. Clara watched him closely, noticing the way he looked at Alohan like she was his world. It stung, but it also warmed her. Alohan deserved happiness, even if it hadn't included her. Clara, Thomas said, breaking her thoughts. Your grandmother used to talk about you all the time. She'd say you were her firefly, always glowing, always moving. He pulled a small photograph from his pocket, an old snapshot of Clara and Alohan, laughing in the meadow. She never let you go. Clara's throat closed up. She took the photo, her fingers trembling. The shawl seemed to pulse, as if echoing the memory. She excused herself and stepped outside, needing air. Wrapping the shawl tighter, she closed her eyes, and another vision came: a stormy night. Alohan clutching the shawl, sobbing as she stitched Clara's name into it, a promise to find her again. When Clara returned, her resolve hardened. She needed answers, not just memories. What else can the shawl do? She asked Alohan, her voice steady. There's more, isn't there? Alohan nodded, her eyes gleaming. It can show you truths, Clara. Not just the past, but the heart of things. Wear it tonight. Ask it what you need to know. Clara stood in the meadow as dusk settled, the shawl glowing faintly under the first stars. Her grandmother's words echoed in her mind. Ask it what you need to know. She tightened the shawl around her shoulders, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and longing, and whispered, Show me why we were apart. The air shimmered, and the world dissolved into a memory. Clara found herself in a hospital room, the sterile smell stinging her nose. Alohan lay in a bed, her face bruised and bandaged, her eyes distant. A doctor's voice murmured about burns and recovery, but Alohan's gaze was fixed on the shawl, clutched in her hands. Clara, she whispered, her voice broken. I'll find you. The scene shifted to a tiny apartment. Alohan hunched over a table, stitching the shawl with trembling hands. A letter sat beside her, addressed to Clara, but it was unopened, marked return to sender. Clara's chest tightened, moved away, too young to leave a forwarding address, too hurt to look back. Alohan had tried, again and again, but Clara had been unreachable. The vision faded, leaving Clara gasping under the stars. The shawl felt heavier now, woven with Alohan's desperation and love. Clara stumbled back to the cottage, her face streaked with tears. Alohan was waiting by the hearth, her expression one of quiet dread. You tried to find me, Clara said, her voice shaking. All those years I thought you didn't care. Alohan stood, her hands reaching for Clara's. I cared too much. I was afraid you'd hate me for failing you. The shawl was my way of keeping you close until I could face you again. Clara pulled her grandmother into a hug, the shawl pressed between them. I could never hate you, she whispered. They held each other, the years of separation melting into the warmth of the moment. The next day, Clara explored the countryside, the shawl draped over her shoulders like a companion. She passed an old oak tree where she used to climb, its branches gnarled but strong. Another memory flickered: her younger self, perched on a branch, Alohan cheering her on. The shawl pulsed, and she closed her eyes, expecting another vision. Instead, she felt a warmth, a whisper of courage, as if the shawl was urging her forward. That afternoon, a new figure arrived, a woman in her 40s, with sharp eyes and a hesitant smile. Clara? She asked, stepping through the gate. I'm Lila, Thomas's daughter. Clara froze, the shawl tingling against her skin. Another twist: Thomas had a family, a life intertwined with Alohan's. Lila held out a photo album. Dad said you should see this. It's from the years after the fire. Inside were pictures of Alohan and Thomas rebuilding the cottage, planting the garden, and Clara's breath caught Alohan holding a drawing Clara had made as a child, her face full of pride. Lila's voice was gentle. She talked about you constantly. She never gave up hope. Clara's eyes burned. The shawl had shown her Alohan's heart, but Lila's words made it real. Thank you, she managed, her voice thick. Lila hugged her, a stranger who felt like family. That night, Clara wore the shawl again, asking it to show her something new. The vision took her to a winter night, Alohan and Thomas sitting by the fire, the shawl across Eloan's lap. She'll come back, Eloan said, her voice fierce. Thomas nodded, his hand on hers. She will, and she'll love you. Clara returned to the present, her heart full. The shawl wasn't just a bridge to the past, it was a promise of love, unbroken by time. She found Eloan outside, staring at the stars. I saw you, Clara said. You never stopped believing in me. Eloan smiled, tears glinting. Never. And the shawl will always show you that. Clara woke to the sound of birdsong. The shawl folded neatly beside her bed. Each day in the countryside felt like a step closer to the girl she used to be, the one who believed in magic and love. But today, she felt a new urgency. The shawl had more to reveal, and she was ready to listen. At breakfast, Eloan watched her closely, her eyes bright with anticipation. You're different today, she said, stirring her tea. The shawl's working its magic, isn't it? Clara nodded, her fingers brushing the fabric. It's like it's waking me up. I want to know everything it holds. She hesitated, then added, and I want to know about you and Thomas. All of it. Eloan's smile was bittersweet. Then let's walk. The shawl works best in the open air. They stepped outside, the countryside unfolding around them, golden fields, distant hills, and a sky so blue it hurt to look at. Clara wrapped the shawl around her shoulders, and Eloan began to talk. After the fire, I was a ghost of myself, Eloan said, her voice steady but soft. Thomas found me wandering these fields, half mad with grief. He gave me a home, a purpose, but I never stopped weaving the shawl, pouring my love for you into it. Clara's heart clenched. I wish I'd known, she said, her voice breaking. I would have come back sooner. Eloan stopped, turning to face her. You're here now? That's what matters. She gestured to the shawl. Ask it for the truth of us. It'll show you. That night, under a blanket of stars, Clara clutched the shawl and whispered, Show me our love. The world melted away, and she stood in the cottage, watching Eloan stitch the shawl by lamplight. But this time, Clara saw herself 12 years old, curled up beside her grandmother, the shawl draped over them both. I'll always be with you, Eloan whispered in the vision, kissing Clara's forehead. The scene shifted to Eloan alone, years later, clutching the shawl as she wrote another letter to Clara, her hands shaking. I'll find you, she vowed, her voice fierce. The shawl glowed, absorbing her promise, her love, her hope. Clara opened her eyes, sobbing. The shawl had shown her the depth of Eloan's devotion, a love that had never wavered. She ran to her grandmother, who was waiting by the cottage door, and threw her arms around her. I saw it, Clara said. I saw you. Eloan held her tightly, tears falling. I never let you go, Clara. Not once. The next day, Thomas and Lila joined them for a picnic in the meadow. Clara watched them, her heart softening. Thomas's quiet strength, Lila's warmth, they were part of Eloan's healing, and now, part of Clara's too. Lila shared stories of Eloan's resilience, how she'd rebuilt the garden, how she'd taught Lila to weave. She's a force, Lila said, grinning at Clara. Like you. Clara smiled, the shawl around her shoulders. She felt its warmth, its magic, binding them all together. As the sun set, she closed her eyes, and the shawl showed her one last vision. Her future self, standing in this meadow, teaching a young girl, her daughter, perhaps to weave a new shawl, Eloan's laughter echoing in the distance. Clara returned to the present, her heart full. The shawl was more than a relic, it was a living bond, a testament to love that endured. She looked at Eloan, Thomas, and Lila, her family, and knew she was home.